What's up, everybody? Andrew Cooper here, Coop's Fantasy Football Fiasco. What's happening, everybody? We had the draft this week. On Wednesday, I had Thor Nystrom on to talk a little bit about rookies, but I've yet to give my takes on these rookies. So that's what we're doing today. Thank you, everyone, popping in. I see Mr. Scampers and Hal already in the chat. I guess I was doing something very important before this, hanging out with the Scott Fishbowl guys in the chat there, watching them bumble their way through another stream where they give away Scott Fishbowl invites. Those guys, man, crack me up every time. One day they will start on time. But enough about that. Let's get to what we're talking about today. Before we get into it, I have to go on a very quick rant here. Something that has been kind of bugging me lately. Hal, Charlene, thank you guys for popping in. And that's and again, this is probably the wrong audience to rant to because a lot of you guys are here for information. You guys, Fantasy Alarm members, you do read the articles, you obviously check out the shows, but there's so many people out there that I see that essentially just get all their information from Twitter for research for fantasy football or anything. And I personally think that's insane. That's like going to the library and just reading the backs of a bunch of books and then going home and being like, "You should have." I know everything now. I've gotten a taste of every single thing. What you should be using Twitter for is finding people that are good at this stuff, right? It's a great way to browse and find people like JJ Zachariason or Dwayne McFarland or Howard Bender, and then check out their content because that's how you learn, right? That's how you become better at this game. You actually absorb the content, the shows, the articles, the real information, and incorporate it into the way you play, and then you become better, right? For me personally, just looking at tweets is just going to give you a snippet. It's going to confuse you, right? You're going to see some tweet about Khalil Shakir, and without the context of where you should take him or how you should approach him or what you should do, is just going to go in your mind, and then you're going to reach for that player and mess everything up. If you read the articles and read the information, absorb the information, you're going to be a better fantasy gamer. And in my opinion, to some degree, even just drafting off someone's rankings is a bad way to play because you don't know what the thought process is that went into that. And I'm talking linear rankings, especially here. You don't know, how they landed these spots. And when you look at certain players, there's really no way to judge one versus the other. Like you see a set of rankings where it says, Tyler Boyd, a free agent, and then Rashi Rice, who could be suspended for a few games, and there's guys coming off torn ACLs, and there's guys that are slot guys, and there's guys that are field stretchers, and guys that are different positions. Right? There's no way to really incorporate that information and know what the heck is going on. That's why when we do best ball draft guides and things like that, I include linear rankings. People want them. I also include a grid with tiers, right? The top six guys, then the next six guys, and so on, because that's more helpful. And then I include articles for everything, the targets I want, the sleepers, the busts, the rookies, everything. So you know what's going on. And that's what we do here. We have the rookie rankings on our website for your rookie drafts if you just want to go off that. But in this show, I'm going to go through and use some recent ADP and talk about my ranking and talk about where I'm drafting guys, where I'm trading out, where I'm trading up, things that you can actually use in your draft. Because rookie drafts, to me, they're insanity, right? You go in and you're drafting what, 2, 3, maybe 4 guys out of 30, and unless somebody trades with you, which is sometimes difficult, it's pretty rigid. Sometimes you need to reach, sometimes you need to take best available. Sometimes you need to take a guy that you don't even particularly like because that's the smartest move that you can make mathematically, and you're giving yourself the best odds to succeed. I talked about this on a show yesterday that at one point I went through and I was doing a rookie draft, and it got to the point where no one was taking a certain player that was a second round pick that I didn't even particularly love because I didn't know too much about him at the time. I wasn't even creating content. I was just, playing. And I took that player against my will because I knew based on research that other people had done that I was giving myself the best odds by taking a guy picked in the second round. And that player, I sat there and said, "Oh, you know what? Guess Devontae Adams is on my team now." And I took him, and the first couple of years he wasn't even good. And I sat there and I was like, "Oh, I drafted this player that I didn't even think was good because of the process." And guess what? It turned out to be one of my best ever picks. So that's what we're going to do today is talk about what happened in the draft, the players we liked before that got the draft capital, the players that we didn't like that got the draft capital, and the players that we did like that didn't, and help sort this whole thing out. So thank you guys for tuning in, for joining us today, and let's get to it. I'm looking at Superflex tight end premium ADP that uh, was gathered by Dynasty Data Lab. So shout out to them. They're out there, DLF in that group. They're going to have ADP and stuff soon. There's not many good sources from this week. So I've got a source here that is from this week, real drafts being done where we can take a look at where guys are going and decide for ourselves whether we want to take those players or not. And again, you don't have to follow me. You don't have to take this advice. It's your team. Draft the guys that you want. This is what I'm doing. So first and foremost, the number one guy off the board here. And again, sorry for the rant, but sometimes I got to get things off my chest, and this is the show for it. It's my show. It's just me. So talk about whatever we want. You know what I mean? I'll talk about the Red Sox if I want. But today we're talking about dynasty rookies. And then moving forward, what we're going to do is on Wednesday, we're going to do best ball drafts with the Fantasy Alarm members, live ones. Howard Bender is back for that. So we're going to do a bunch of those. And then, we'll get back into, as we get closer to the actual season, we're going to go back to doing shows every single day like we were doing last year. And during the season, obviously, we're going to have the waiver show and the trade show and all the funny stuff and all the goofy stuff. For now, we're just going to do two football shows a week, Wednesday and Friday. So Wednesday will be best ball drafts. This is the last one I'm doing on rookies. We spend so much time researching these guys and watching the highlights and doing all this stuff to rank 30 guys where we pick 3. We overdo it. So moving forward, next week I will do rookies in best ball and rookies for redraft. And then we're just back into it, man. Doing drafts. We're getting ready for the Scott Fish Bowl. We're doing best ball drafts, which we are going to crush this year. So that's where it's up. That's what's up. So here we go. Number 1, Caleb Williams going off the board first in ADP, and I believe he should. Now, if you want to take Marvin Harrison Jr. because you believe him to be the best wide receiver prospect since Calvin Johnson, go ahead. You can do that if you want. It's not like there are tiers for a reason, and there's ranges of outcome. You can do that if you want. For me, I'm taking the best player for the format. That's Caleb Williams. I've watched him. I've looked at the numbers. I think he has tremendous upside, and we know that the best hit rate is quarterbacks that go number 1 overall in the NFL draft. And for Superflex, that's the most valuable piece. So I'm taking Caleb Williams. If you want to take Marvin Harrison Jr., go ahead. Marvin Harrison Jr. goes next based on ADP. And guess what? If you want to take Jaden Daniels there, then go right ahead. You can absolutely take him if you want. You can take Drake May. You can take Malik Neighbors. I'm taking Marvin Harrison Jr. in most cases, but an argument can absolutely be made for Jaden Daniels. And the one I've been making on this show, and I hate to recap and say things again, but I think that this is an important statistic, is that when you look at true rushing quarterbacks, right? And I used 80 carries as the line, which is 4.7 carries per game. So 4 or 5 carries a game. That's a rushing quarterback. If you're running less than 4 times a game, to me, that's not a rushing quarterback. That's a mobile quarterback, right? And again, you look at Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson, they routinely are running more than 100 times a game. I think they've run over 100 times a game every season. So 80 is not a crazy bar. Since 2000, right, there have been 15 players that either in their first or second year got 80 carries in one of those seasons, right? Of those 15 players, 14 of them finished top 10 at least once over the first 2 years. 14 of them. The one player that didn't was Tim Tebow. So even Vince Young finished QB9, right? Justin Fields, who now his value has fallen off, he had obviously had QB1 seasons within his first couple of years. So that's the idea here, is that Jaden Daniels, even if you don't particularly like him, he's going to go out and run the football a ton and probably finish fairly high in fantasy football. And you can get off that wild ride if you want to. If you watch the first year and he's running around and you don't think he's going to be a long-term quarterback in the NFL, you can trade him. You could have traded Justin Fields if you wanted to. I had Justin Fields and I traded him. I had Josh Allen and I traded him, and I regret that. I have Josh Allen still in a couple leagues, but in one league, he came out through 52% completion percentage. And then the next year through 58%. And I said, you know what? I think I'm going to get off this ride now. And then the following year, year 3, they traded for Stephon Diggs and he threw 68%. So that was a mistake on my part, but it proves that you can take these guys and they can be terrible at throwing the football, which Josh Allen was. 52% is legitimately terrible, right? Justin Fields, not good at throwing the football. right? You can get off the ride because of the mobility. Whereas some of these other guys, if it's bad, it goes bad real quickly. So I have no problem with Marvin Harrison Jr. or Jaden Daniels at 2. After that, ADP goes Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Brock Bowers. And I tell you this, Rome Odunze has tremendous upside. He seems like a great player. I don't put him in the tier with Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. I'm not definitely not going to be one of the people that takes Rome Odunze above Malik Neighbors. And personally, I'm taking Drake May and possibly even JJ McCarthy ahead of Rome Odunze. And in tight end premium, I'm taking Brock Bowers too. And that's just me. My opinion is that Rome Odunze, I'm concerned on two fronts. One is that he's not going to be a top two target on the team right away. It's going to be Keenan Allen and DJ Moore, right? He's going to end up rotating and being a part-time player like Jackson Smith and Jigba and like CeeDee Lamb was as a rookie. So, and that's not a huge concern for me in Dynasty. The concern for me is that he had a late breakout, right? He still broke out early, but he went back to school. And, people say, oh, he worked out with the basketball team to get better at contested catches. He only had 4 contested catches in his first few years of school, first 3 years of school, went back to school and had 21. But just imagine some of these other guys, Drake London or Marvin Harrison Jr. goes back to school for a 4th year when they're bigger and older and stronger and faster than everybody else. Just imagine what their stats would be like. So for me, Rome Odunze, I just think he's a little more risky than these other guys. And I'm going to lean into the format personally. That's the difference maker. Is that if there wasn't all these quarterbacks in the first round and there wasn't a Brock Bowers in this class, it would be Rome Odunze clearly for me. But because I have those options available to me and it's super flex tight end premium, I'm going with Brock Bowers and Drake May and JJ McCarthy. In my single QB leagues, I'm taking Rome Odunze at 3. It goes Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze for me. So it's not that I hate him. It's just that you have other options here. So that actually gets you through the first 8 picks, to be honest. I think you should take some fashion of Caleb Williams, Marvin Harrison, and I won't even put them in order of position. I'll put them in order of position. You should take some combination of Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and Brock Bowers, I think, in the first 8 picks. After that is where you're free to kind of do whatever you want. In the next tier for me, so ADP goes Xavier Worthy, Brian Thomas Jr., Lad McConkey, Jonathan Brooks, Bo Nix, and that's where I'll drop the tier hammer. If you want to take the tier hammer, sounds like something you drop on somebody to make them cry, and maybe that's Keon Coleman's crying here because I left him out. But that's the group that I would group those guys together, and you can take anybody you want from that group. If you want to take Jonathan Brooks there, be my guest. At 9, like, especially if and we have to factor this in, especially if you're a competitive team that's ready to compete now and you finished first, second, third, or fourth, which is how you end up picking at 12, 11, 10, 9 in your draft, then take Jonathan Brooks because he'll probably start for the Panthers sooner rather than later and he'll contribute quickly, which is what you need when you're competing now. So if you're a competing team now, take Jonathan Brooks. This draft has worked out perfectly for the teams that are good because there are so many good players that they can get someone great at the end of the first round. The people that tanked, it kind of hurt them to some degree. And I see Dustin in the chat, Keon Coleman disrespect, such a Pat's homer. I'll talk about Keon Coleman for sure. And I like Keon Coleman's upside. I just think this group of guys is a little bit safer to some degree. So I'll get to that. For me, I look at Xavier Worthy. They have Marquise Brown. So Xavier Worthy might not completely flash and take over this season. Marquise Brown, though, is on a 1-year deal for $7 million, and we know what he's doing. He's trying to prove to people he's healthy. He's trying to prove to people that he can be a winner and contribute on a good team. And he wants to pad his stats so he can get paid next year. Juju Smith-Schuster went to this team and did that himself. And he only had like 900 yards, and then he got paid like $33 million. So Marquise Brown's taking $7 million on a prove-it deal to go to this team and get paid next year. And that's when it's really wheels up for Xavier Worthy. But Worthy could just take over this year. The plan for Marquise Brown could backfire, right? So, and not to mention, if you're in like a best ball draft, then Worthy's going to have explosive plays with his speed. So don't worry about it there. Brian Thomas Jr., I think this is a perfect pick for the Jaguars, they lost Calvin Ridley. They needed a split end on the outside because they have plenty of guys that play slot. They have Christian Kirk. They have Evan Ingram. They have a field stretcher, albeit a slow field stretcher, in Gabe Davis. They needed a big split end. In comes the 6'3", 210-pound Brian Thomas. I think that's a great pick. So, and again, we've seen guys that were like rock solid, automatic great picks at the end of the first round bust. Everyone liked N'Keal Harry. Let's not pretend like everyone didn't think he was a solid player and a solid pick, and he just didn't show up. So that can happen, but Brian Thomas there I like. And then Lad McConkey is another one that I really like. If you watch him, this guy is a separator. He can get open. He can play on the outside and in the slot. And I think that uh, for what Greg Roman and Jim Harbaugh want to do, like he can come in and be that Zay Flowers right away. That's on the field every play. He can block just fine, and he'll get open and he'll move the sticks on first down. We talked about it with Thor on Wednesday, so I like Lad McConkey there too. And honestly, I personally like the Bo Nix situation. So Bo Nix to me, you know, he is not super flashy, but that's not what they want, right? Sean Payton wants to run his offense, and he loves Joe Lombardi, who is with him in New Orleans, and they want to dink and dunk the ball, and that's why they've brought in all their old friends, right? From they run in, and it's not like you can go and get Alvin Kamara, but they brought in all these guys from the old teams, right? Fullback Michael Burton and Michael Bandy and all these guys. They're trying to recreate what they were doing. In fact, even though they don't have an Austin Eckler and Alvin Kamara, this team threw the most passes to the running back of any team in the league last year, more than anybody else the Broncos did. You just didn't realize it because they were spread out a little bit between Samaje Perine and Javonte Williams and all these guys. So they said to themselves, how do we find a guy that's as close as possible to Drew Brees as we can get, which obviously nobody's that close to Drew Brees. He's an Hall of Fame legend, super mega star. I'm not talking about superstar wise. I'm talking about in what they do. So Drew Brees was a very cerebral player who took things very seriously and read. I mean, like you go back, there's stories about him at high school telling his teammates that he doesn't want to see them going out on Halloween eating candy and drinking soda because they got a game tomorrow. Like that's how serious this guy is. And he was very good before the snap. That's why he was so great at getting the ball out of his hands, despite his size, able to get the ball out to the running back and to Michael Thomas and all these guys on quick throws, is because he did a lot of the work before the snap. So that's what he's looking for. Sean Payton wants smart before the snap with his reads and very accurate and gets the ball out quickly. Zach Wilson and Bo Nix, they fit the bill. They're going to compete for that job. Whoever gets the job, the upside is there. I mean, we don't know who from this quarterback group is going to, be a star and who's not, but we do know that they love this guy from the rip. So I'm just investing in Sean Payton here. That's why I'm in on Bo Nix at that spot. And I see Kevin Tompkins in the chat saying Jonathan Brooks might also be fool's gold. Kind of hate this 2024. Panthers can't outright cut Miles Sanders, aren't playing for anything. Why give him huge carries? I honestly agree with that for like best ball and redraft. Like it's not, he might not fully take over right away, especially coming off the ACL. It could take him a little bit of time. But again, if you're competing to win now, like if you're picking at 12 because you won the league, then you don't need him to be a super mega star right away. You're just hoping that he contributes to your team this year, next year, the following year, before you might have to blow it up and sell guys off. You know what I mean? So for me, I do like that pick still. And I think he is the best running back in this class long term. So that's the plan here. I think, you look at Jonathan Taylor's profile, the guy that can run all over you, doesn't really catch a ton of passes. That's where Jonathan Brooks is. Like, it doesn't matter that he's not a guy that's going to catch 100 balls because he's a great runner. So I like that pick there. Let's get to Keon Coleman. What's up, Mile High Luke? What's up, everybody in the chat? Thanks for popping in. For those at home listening in, just going to recap the ADP here because that was 13 picks. This is Superflex, tight end premium. Also, people that just joined us. What we're doing, we're going through some ADP, and I'm telling you what I'm doing in my drafts. You don't have to follow me, but if you do, then kudos to you. And feel free to hit me up on the Discord with your thoughts and what's going on in your drafts. I help people out all the time on the Fantasy Alarm Discord. If you're an all-pro member or if you bought one of our guides and ended up in the Discord, thanks for hanging out. We do a bunch of best ball drafts, and that best ball guide is available right now. If you go to fantasyalarm.com and go to the best ball draft guide, you can get that set up. But this is for Dynasty rookie drafts. The ADP right now is, and this is Superflex 10 and Premium, Caleb Williams at 1, Marvin Harrison Jr. at 2, Jaden Daniels at 3, Malik Neighbors at 4, Rome Odunze at 5, which I said I don't particularly love that myself. Drake May at 6, JJ McCarthy at 7, Brock Bowers at 8, right? That's my top 8 players or so, and I'm taking Rome Odunze 8th out of that group. Ninth pick is Xavier Worthy. 10th is Brian Thomas Jr. 11th, Lad McConkey. 12, Jonathan Brooks. 13, Bo Nix. And I actually like that order, and I have no problem if you want to take Brooks or Bo Nix anywhere in that group, starting with pick 9. After that, you got Keon Coleman, and I don't mind Keon Coleman. There's a lot to like about his profile, right? This is a guy that if he got drafted early, I was in. If he fell to the 4th or 5th or 6th round, I would have been 100% out because uh, he's got a lot of warts to his profile, but a lot of that you can blame on his path, right? This guy was playing basketball at Michigan State, right? He for Tom Izzo, which is incredible because Izzo's an incredible coach and he always fields a good team. So this guy's obviously a freak athlete. You don't have to question that. You can't question. He's playing college basketball and football. So he's obviously an awesome athlete, right? He transferred to Florida State to focus on football, where they not only had other incumbent options that are good players, right? Guys that ended up getting drafted like Javon Baker and Jaheim Bell and all these guys, but the quarterback got hurt, right? So Jordan Travis got hurt, missed a bunch of games, so it's hard to dog his production. But when you watch the film and you see what this guy can do, it's insane. He's making insane contested catches, as you would expect from a basketball player. This guy can go up and get it. And the upside case is that this guy has crazy athleticism and he has not developed the tricks yet that you get as a wide receiver. Like DeAndre Hopkins and Keenan Allen, they're not particularly fast or athletic, but they have a ton of tricks to beat you and kind of fake you out and catch the ball over here, or create just a little bit of separation to make a one-handed catch or make these plays. Like that's why rookie corners have such a hard time with these guys, is that they have all these moves and things with and a lot of times linked up with the quarterback timing wise to make you look silly, right? Like the tricks of the trade. And Keon Coleman doesn't have any of that yet. If he can develop that, then he turns into this guy that not only can beat you, with his athleticism and his jump ball ability, but now he has a full range of routes and tricks and everything. The concern is that not everybody can develop those things, right? N'Keal Harry, another guy I brought up, never did. Kelvin Benjamin, as a rookie, went out and caught a bunch of jump balls and then never developed as a wide receiver. And once people figured out he was a one-trick pony in terms of just like, going and getting jump balls or whatever, then he just fizzled out, right? And Kelvin Benjamin, I bring him up because when you look at the production profile and the size and the breakout age and the teammate score, Kelvin Benjamin is within that range of comps. And there's some bad ones in there. So you got to be very careful with guys like that. That's why he goes to this spot for me, where I've gotten through all the guys that I believe are kind of locked in. And now I say, okay, if the floor from this point moving forward, because like Marvin Harrison Jr., the floor is tremendous. We think he's going to be awesome. His father is a Hall of Famer. He's been incredible. Like he's got a good floor. After we get to this point of the draft, when floor is off the table and everybody could suck, give me upside. And I think the upside case for Keon Coleman is great, right? He's got the athleticism. He's going to an amazing landing spot where they just lost Stephon Diggs, the guy that commands 150 targets a season every single year, leads the team in first downs. He is gone. Someone else has to step up and do that. And even as a big Dalton Kincaid fan, I don't think Dalton Kincaid at this stage is getting 150 targets and getting a million first downs. I think he's going to be great this year. I think he's a great player, but Keon Coleman could step in and do that. Khalil Shakir is not going to step up and do that. Matt Collins is not going to step up and do that. So Curtis Samuel might. So it's like Curtis Samuel versus Keon Coleman versus Dalton Kincaid. I will take that bet. He's not going up against T. Higgins and Jamar Chase here, right? So we like Keon Coleman. I don't mind that pick there. And then there's a whole group of these guys, right? So I have no problem with you taking Trey Benson. He, like, obviously, second running back off the board, as we predicted, to a team that has an aging running back. James Conner, I think James Conner turns 29 like today or tomorrow. Chat, let me know when James Conner's birthday is. Because I think it's coming. I think it's literally within like a couple days from now where he turns 29. And he's also never played the entire season. He's never one time played the entire season. He always has missed games. So Trey Benson is going to crack your lineup at some point this year, whether he does it because he phases out James Conner or James Conner gets hurt, like it's going to happen. So Trey Benson, I don't mind that pick. I don't mind the Keon Coleman pick. If you want to take Michael Penix, May 5th. There you go. Thank you, Mile High Luke. Cinco de Mayo. In 2 days, James Conner will turn 29 years old. 29-year-old running back. You know what that means. So just keep that in mind with your Trey Benson thoughts. I would honestly strongly consider Trey Benson over Keon Coleman in that spot. Michael Penix Jr., I'm cool with the pick, man. You can take him if you want. I didn't like it on draft day. I didn't like it for the Falcons. I didn't like it for Falcons fans. I didn't like it for Kirk Cousins. But at the end of the day, if they truly believe in this guy, all that matters is what happens next. And I'm not talking about just this year or next year. If this guy is an NFL caliber quarterback, which there are only so many of in the entire world, to the point where if a guy is like the 18th best quarterback, we call him a loser. If you're the 18th best quarterback in the world, they call you a loser on Twitter. That's how hard this job is, right? But Michael Penix, man, everyone hated the Jalen Hurts pick, hated it. Eagles fans did not like it. And because Carson Wentz was like an MVP caliber player and they just won the Super Bowl and they would have won it with him if he got hurt. That was the whole thing. Well, it turns out that Jalen Hurts is just a good football player and it was a good pick by Howie Roseman. And this might be a good pick of a good football player that you just got to wait on. So again, no problem with you taking him here. No problem with you taking him earlier if you believe. Now, here's where I do have a problem with you taking Michael Penix and Bo Nix ahead of these other guys, is that I did research this offseason and I pulled up every quarterback that was drafted for like 30 years. And I looked at the draft classes themselves and combed through the data and categorized them in certain ways, right? One thing that was clear that a lot of people research has proven, Dave Kluge did some research on it. My research shows it. The number one quarterback has a much higher hit rate than everybody else. That goes for whether that quarterback goes at first overall or whether the first quarterback off the board goes at 10. The hit rate is just better, right? Same goes for quarterback 2 and 3 all the way down, right? Now, you can have times where the quarterback 4 and quarterback 5 hit. Jordan Love was quarterback 4 and Jalen Hurts was quarterback 5. So there are times where that happens. What is very rare, based on combing through the research, is that the quarterback 4 and 5 hit when the quarterbacks 1 and 2 and so on bust. In fact, over the last 30 years, there's not been one time where the quarterback 1 and 2 didn't have a single QB1 season, top 12 season at any point, but the QB 3 and 4 did. You have to go back to Brett Favre in 1991 to find the last time the QB 3 went on to be a QB1 in fantasy football, and the QB1 and 2 never had a single QB1 season. Now, along the way, there are a couple where the QB3 ended up being the best quarterback in the class, but the QB1 and 2 at some point had a QB1 season. And you see it a lot of times where either the entire class busts, or one guy like Trevor Lawrence is good and everyone else busts, or it's just a really good class, right? You have an Eli Manning and Phillip Rivers and Ben Roethlisberger class where everybody's great, or you have 2021 where it goes, Joe Burrow, Tua, Herbert, Jordan Love, Jalen Hurts. So you got to ask yourself, is this class a great class or not? Don't try and thread the needle by picking, Michael Penix Jr. as the QB2 ahead of Jaden Daniels and Drake May, and same with like Bo Nix picking him ahead of Drake May. That you're giving yourself bad odds. The odds that the third overall pick quarterback is going to be worse than Bo Nix are not good. It could happen, but you don't have to make that pick, and the odds are not good. So that's where I draw the line. I have no problem with you drafting these players, especially once those other guys are off the board. Just reaching is unnecessary. Trade back if you want to make that investment. All right. So that's it. That's what the numbers say on that. But I have no problem with Trey Benson, Keon Coleman, Michael Penix Jr. Here's where it gets a little dicey, right? The next 3 guys off the board are Adonai Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, and Xavier Leggett. I'll tell you right now, the Ricky Pearsall landing spot is not good for the short term because they have 2 wide receivers that play every single snap, but I don't care about that as much in Dynasty. I like Ricky Pearsall. I talked about it this past week on Wednesday with Thor, who also, he likes him more than me. Absolutely. Like, he loves him. I like him. But I'm willing to take him because I believe that when Brock Purdy has to get paid, which is coming, he's only making like $1 million a year. That's why this team can go out and sign Javon Hargrave and all these guys. And you say, how is this possible? Do they have some sort of infinite money glitch that you would have in like Grand Theft Auto? No, the quarterback is getting $1 million and every other quarterback's getting like $40 million. That's how they're doing it. Eventually he's going to get paid. And I think at that point, one of Debo or Ayuk is going to be gone and Ricky is going to be one of the guys. And being one of the guys on this team is more valuable than other teams. not necessarily because the quarterback's incredible. I do think he's a good quarterback, but because they use the fullback. When you use a fullback like Kyle Juszczyk or whoever the next fullback's going to be, you don't take the tight end out. You don't take the running back out. You don't take either of the top two wide receivers out. The third guy comes out. That's why Juwan Jennings has done nothing. He never even had a chance. Same with Braxton Berrios on the Dolphins. And it's the same reason why I will not be drafting Odell Beckham Jr. now that he has signed with the Dolphins, because they use Alec Engel. When they put a fullback into the game, Jalen Waddle's not coming out. Tyreek Hill's not coming out. You're not going to take out the tight end when you put in the fullback or the running back. Why would you take out the running back to put in the fullback? It's obviously a run situation. You're going to take out the old injury prone Odell Beckham Jr. So he's going to have a limited snap share. I'm not drafting that player. And with Ricky Parasol, he could have a short, he could be the guy that comes out in the short term. But once he gets into one of those chairs, now it's highly consolidated among him and the other wide receiver and the tight end and the running back, because you have a fullback that gets no targets. So I like Ricky. Not only do I like his profile, not only was he a first round pick, not only did he go to a good team, but when he gets that chair, it's going to be a highly consolidated, great situation for fantasy football. So I'm in on him. Xavier Legette, I am out on. I'm just personally, and this is the guy where if it comes to it, I will draft him because a lot of people are out on him. If it comes to a certain point and no one's taking him, I will take him because he's a first round pick. The Panthers seem to like him, but he is the most volatile asset you could possibly have, right? He already was the scariest asset. If I had to pick one guy, he already was the number one scariest asset because he didn't break out until his 5th year. And his best year was 197 yards. Zach Reed on a show I was on yesterday, shout out to Tactic Assassin, absolute Boston legend. He pointed out that Dylan Lobby, a late round running back out of University of New Hampshire, had 3 games where he had more production than Xavier Legette had in any one of his first 4 seasons. He is the definition of a super crazy late breaking out only in his final season, and that has a negative correlation to fantasy football success, historically speaking. The Panthers are attempting to do something here, drafting this player that would be a tremendous outlier. Now, at a certain point, when all that's left is junk running backs and day 4 wide receivers, I'm taking Xavier Legette. So even though I like Javon Baker and I'm a Patriots fan, I'll take Xavier Legette over Javon Baker, first round pick versus 4th round pick. Some people will have Legette off their board completely because of this, but that's where I draw the line, But that's where I'm living. Adonai Mitchell as well. I just not the profile I usually go for, but I will take him above Xavier Legette. He's going to play opposite of Michael Pittman. Alec Pierce was so inefficient last year, the all-exercise team captain, that I think they just decided they're going to replace him. The question is whether Adonai Mitchell is a full-time guy himself or whether Josh Downs deserves to be a full-time player. Before Alec Pierce and Josh Downs showed up, they used Paris Campbell as an every down player. He would play in the slot for 3 wide receiver sets and move outside for 2 wide receiver sets. If that's what they want to do with Josh Downs next year, with the rookie and Alec Pierce kind of being the part-time guys, then it's wheels up for Josh Downs. Adonai Mitchell, though, could be a full-time guy opposite of Michael Pittman. So the upside case is there as well. So that, I personally, I'm taking Ricky there. I would take Blake Corum ahead of these guys. That goes next. Another guy that I personally would take ahead of Adonai Mitchell and Ricky Parasol is Roman Wilson. And that might be a stretch. You don't have to do that yourself, but I just like this guy, man. He went to Michigan. To give you a short and sweet on this, because we talked about him in depth on Wednesday, but he went to Michigan where they don't throw it a ton. And that's why, people knock JJ McCarthy for that, but JJ McCarthy got drafted. We're giving him a pass because they had 58 rushing touchdowns, Blake Corum did, and they went undefeated. So they didn't need to throw a ton. And this guy, was their best wide receiver. And this same organization had Nico Collins that never had more than 729 yards, and people wrote him off, and he fell to the 3rd round too. And it turns out that he's a good player that was just in an organization that doesn't throw the ball a ton. And then when CJ Stroud showed up, now he's a superstar, and he finished as a wide receiver 1 in fantasy football. Nico Collins, despite missing a game, finished as wide receiver 12 in fantasy football. So for me, Roman Wilson fits that exact profile, and he was picked by the team that has the the best history of finding and identifying wide receiver talent, right? This team has had more good wide receivers walk away from the team than the Patriots, my favorite team, has ever drafted, ever in the history of the organization. Like the players that have walked away from the Steelers because they have too many good players. They have Hines Ward and Antonio Brown, all these guys, and too many good players that you have Mike Wallace and Emmanuel Sanders and Plaxico Burress and now Deontay Johnson and all these guys walking away from the organization because they are too good at finding wide receivers, right? So give me the guy that team thinks is awesome if as a third round pick, which is great draft capital, day two draft capital. So I'm in on him. I'm in on Jalen Polk to the Patriots. I don't love the pick. I don't even love the player. And Brandon Huffman came on the show before the draft and said Jalen McMillan on his own teammate is a better player, which really, when the Patriots took Polk so high, it threw me for a loop. But you got to trust the process, and I think that he has a chance to be a good player here. When I look at this ADP, there's a name that really sticks out that I'm not taking. Two names actually of this group. So starting with the 12th name picked, we're in the second round here. The first round ends with Ladd McConkey and Jonathan Brooks. The second round goes Bo Nix, Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, Michael Penix Jr. I actually have no problem picking any of those four guys. I like them all. Then it goes Adonai Mitchell, who I don't love. I would in this spot I take Ricky Pearsall, and if Ricky goes, I'll trade back. Adonai Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, who we don't like, Blake Corum, and then Troy Franklin goes at pick 21. And Troy Franklin is a guy that's going to be, in my opinion, this year's Hakeem Butler, a guy that a bunch of people really liked on film and before the draft. Matt Waldman, film guy, love him, love his content, love this player, but he fell to the fourth round. NFL professional scouts, the entire NFL professional scouting complex decided together that they didn't really love this player, that there were 10 plus wide receivers that they thought were better, right? And a lot of these guys like Javon Baker and Jermaine Burton have character issues, and even they went ahead of Troy Franklin. So for me, Troy Franklin has the best chance to be this year's Hakeem Butler as a guy that everyone in the fantasy community loved and then the NFL community didn't like. And it turns out the NFL community was right. People were still taking Hakeem Butler in like the first and second round of their rookie drafts. And Kelvin Harmon, despite them falling to day 3 of the NFL draft, and now that's happened with Troy Franklin, and he's being drafted ahead of Jalen Polk and Roman Wilson. And I'm not doing that. No chance. So that's the biggest red flag here. I'll 100% take Xavier Legette and Adonai Mitchell over Troy Franklin. Troy Franklin is off my board. I will not draft any Troy Franklin. And you know what? If I'm wrong, it means the entire NFL was wrong. And I'm okay. We can accept that. You know what I mean? The entire NFL missed. They didn't take Amon-Ra St. Brown and Puka Nacua, but our ability to correctly identify those guys is drastically overrated. We think we're very good at finding those guys when we're not really that great at finding those guys, right? Like no one. People will say, "Oh yeah, Adam Thielen, he broke out." Well, Adam Thielen went undrafted and then didn't break out till he was like 26 or 27 years old. You were adding him off waivers. A lot of times, the guys that break out, you're adding them off waivers. You're not actually drafting them. And when you reach for those guys, that's when you screw up royally. So no Troy Franklin for me. Jalen Wright, Marshawn Lloyd, I'm in on him. I'm in on him at this ADP, which is the end of the second, early third round where they're going. Jalen Wright goes RB4 as pick 24. Marshawn Lloyd is pick 25. Look, this is Dynasty. There's a reason these teams paid up for these players. These are good players. Jalen Wright's a good player. Marshawn Lloyd's a good player. They were drafted in the third round. Alvin Kamara was drafted in the third round by the Saints. And at the time, a bunch of people in their rookie drafts did not take Alvin Kamara because the Saints had Adrian Peterson and had Mark Ingram. And we asked ourselves, when is this guy going to play? Like, he's stuck behind Hall of Famer Adrian Peterson. He's stuck behind Mark Ingram, who's a stud. And he's just never going to play. And we're going to be stuck with this guy for a long time. He's the third round pick. And people are taking Samaje Perine ahead of him based on Perine's opportunity. And it turns out that Alvin Kamara is just such a good football player that the team says, hey, we got to get these good football players on the field. So they traded away Adrian Peterson and they started him. Now, I don't think the Dolphins traded away Raheem Mostert, but he's 32 years old or 33 or whatever he is, or 31, whatever he is. Doesn't matter. Once you're over 29, it doesn't matter. He's 30 something years old, injury prone, smaller back. And then they have Devon Achan. They're going to get this guy on the field, Jalen Wright. Good players, just draft them because when you get to the second and third round, the hit rates we're talking 25, 30% at best hit rates. So most of these guys are more than half these guys are just going to do nothing. I hate to break it to you. I know it's very exciting now. More than half these guys are going to do nothing. So just take the good players. I think Jalen Wright is a good player, and I think that Marshawn Lloyd's a good player. So I'm going to draft those guys. Next in ADP, you have Ben Sennett, Malachi Corley, Jatavian Sanders. Ben Sennett has to be ranked as the tight end too. He went to a good situation where if as Zach Ertz fades off into the sunset, then he will become the tight end in a Cliff Kingsbury offense, which is a good spot to be. Personally, I'm just not paying for him at that price. I would rather wait and take Jatavian Sanders, or honestly, not even take any of these tight ends and just figure it out off waivers. I mean, if you have a 3-round rookie draft, a lot of these guys are going undrafted, and I like the upside for all of them. And I don't think there's a huge upside case difference to be made, right? In most tight end rookie classes, there is one good player at most. I hate to break it to you. The best tight end classes of all time are the ones that have had two really great tight ends, which would be like Gronk and Jimmy Graham, or Kelsey and Ertz. Those are the best tight end classes where there's two really good players. It's very rare for us to see three really good players. We've only seen it a couple times. It's like, Mark Andrews and that class, but like there's not really many. You can't really find a bunch of classes with a bunch of really good guys. The class with Sam Laporta and Dalton Kincaid and Luke Musgrave is the rare exception. And the reality is that we might only have one or two good guys from that class when all is said and done. Fancy. We get really excited about these guys and then they can kind of taper out. So we probably just have Brock Bowers. I'm personally only drafting Brock Bowers, and then I'm watching these other guys because so many times somebody comes out of the woodwork. Like Mark Andrews was drafted behind Hayden Hurst, and Logan Thomas wasn't even a quarterback and wasn't even a tight end. Neither was Darren Waller. And George Kittle was a 5th-round pick. So when I look at Jatavian Sanders and Theo Johnson and Eric All and all these guys, I like them all, and I put them all in one tier where I'm just kind of watching them and seeing who pops, who gets a job, and then we add them. So if you have to draft them, we have the rookie rankings up on the site, and you can draft them based on that order. But I would rather just wait and just add them off waivers because in a lot of cases, these guys are going to hit waivers, and you can add them. So that's my tight end spiel for now. Let's get back to the ADP. So that's the second round. Again, to recap, Jonathan Brooks, Bo Nix, Keon Coleman, Trey Benson, Michael Penix Jr., Adonai Mitchell, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Legette, Blake Corum, Troy Franklin, Jalen Polk, Roman Wilson, Jalen Wright, Marshawn Lloyd. And then we're getting in the next round. Next round is Marshawn Lloyd, Ben Sennett, Malachi Corley, Jatavian Sanders, Jermaine Burton, Bucky Irving, Javon Baker, Jalen McMillan, Spencer Rattler, Ray Davis, Brendan Rice, and Braylon Allen. And here in the third round of your rookie drafts, ADP goes out the window. Forget about it. Just draft the guys you like, right? So I named a bunch of guys. Here are the ones I like. I like taking Jermaine Burton. I'll take Jermaine Burton at that ADP at 29 all day long, right? And the reason being is that he slid to the third round where the hit rates are not good. We're talking like 23%, right? Third round in your rookie draft and the NFL draft, the hit rates are not that good in the third round. They're astronomically better than the 4th and 5th and 6th round, which is why we like these guys better, but it doesn't mean it's a good hit rate. Jermaine Burton, at least with him, we can say the production was good and the film was good, and he went to Alabama and Georgia. If somebody just looked at that information in the combine and everything, they would ask themselves, why did this guy fall in the third round? And the answer is because he might be a jerk, right? He went to 6 different schools over the last few years between high school and college because he kept pissing people off and having character issues and getting transferred and getting kicked out. But because he's a really good football player, teams like Georgia and Alabama kept taking shots on him. And when you go through the day 3 and later hits in fantasy football, it's very rare to have a guy like Puka Nakua that just fell and he's just good and he seems like a good guy. Like all these guys had some sort of narrative as to why they fell. Stephon Diggs fell because of character issues and red flags and injuries and because he went to Maryland. Antonio Brown fell because he was crazy. Brandon Marshall fell because he had undiagnosed bipolar disorder. Tyreek Hill fell because literally he admitted to a felony. You know what I mean? Like he would have got drafted way earlier. Uh, Pierre Garcon was a Division III player at Mount Union. Julian Edelman was a quarterback. When you take the hit rate on these guys, which is already at 5%, and you take out all the guys that fell for a specific reason, the hit rate now all of a sudden is like 2%. Hit rate is terrible in these last rounds. Most of these guys will play special teams and they'll be happy to do it because that means they're an NFL player rather than being not in the league. So that's what we're looking at with these guys and why it's so rough. And Amon-Ra St. Brown, you got to remember, he wasn't super athletic, and his dad is crazy, and his brother just flamed out in a major way, Equanimous St. Brown. So people might have looked at that situation and been like, do we really want to deal with this guy's, crazy helicopter dad that changed their last name to St. Brown instead of Brown because it looks good on a jersey, and he has these kids eating meatballs for breakfast, and they told them not to stretch because a lion doesn't stretch before it takes down a gazelle. And he told them, to tell NFL teams that they don't play special teams like Equanimous St. Brown did. Though everything I just said is true about Amon-Ra St. Brown's father, which is potentially why this guy fell in the draft. And he's one of the few hits that we consider as a guy that fell that didn't have crazy character issues. So all that is said to say that Jermaine Burton might be one of these guys that would have gotten drafted earlier if he doesn't have character issues, which is why I'm taking it. Because if something happens with T. Higgins or Jamar Chase and they get traded or they're gone, either this year or next, Jermaine Burton is a talented football player. And if he gets his act together the way Chris Carter did, Chris Carter had serious issues when he was with the Eagles, got traded to the Vikings, quit drinking, got his act together, and became a Hall of Famer. That doesn't always happen. But if it happens with this guy, now what you have is you have a guy that used to be a jerk, and now he's just a really good football player, right? So that's where we're going, Jermaine Burton. Javon Baker also has some character issues, which is why he fell. And he's already on Instagram. If you don't, with his attitude, he's already on Instagram saying that it's BS that 10 guys got taken before him, which I love that attitude. This guy had to transfer out of Alabama. He was talented enough to get into Alabama, transferred out because there was such a logjam. And, he's a great contested catch player, great footwork, keeping his feet in bounds. I like Javon Baker, man. I like Jermaine Burton, Javon Baker. Those are the guys I take stabs on. I'll also take a stab on Jalen McMillan because Brandon Huffman came in and said on the show, who's one of the legendary high school to college scouts, said Jalen McMillan's a dog. So I'm in on him. Spencer Rattler, I'm not taking. I'm just not doing it. He fell to the 5th round of the NFL draft. There were 6 quarterbacks taken in the 1st round. Nobody took Spencer Rattler to the 5th. I don't understand why people are still drafting Spencer Rattler. Forget about it. Don't worry about Spencer Rattler. So that's the crew I like. I'm not really taking Malachi Corley. Like the way they've set it up with Garrett Wilson and Mike Williams is that Malachi Corley probably is going to be a part-time slot guy, and he's probably going to be part of the game plan for when Rodgers is gone. And that just worries me a little bit. 3rd round pick to the Jets to be a slot guy. I just don't really love that upside. So I'm taking Burton and Baker from this group and McMillan. Not really taking much Corley or Bucky Irving. Then you get into the last group here where it's like Ray Davis, Brendan Rice, Braylon Allen, Luke McCaffrey, Devontae Walker, Audric Estime, Kamani Vidal, Will Shipley, Theo Johnson, Isaac Garendo, Tyrone Tracy. Like there's so many names, and you just got to pick from that group the guy that you like best, right? Because now we're talking 4th round if your draft goes 4th round, or waiver round after the 3rd round, where you just say, okay, I got to drop somebody here. My team's trash. I'm going to add somebody. To me, just based on the people I've talked to on this show and the research I've done, the names that I like from that crew are Luke McCaffrey and our own, Dustin Lucky, who hangs out. He likes Luke McCaffrey too. I mean, he got 3rd round capital by the skin of his teeth. We're talking the compensatory picks at the end of the 3rd round, which they count. But he went ahead of Troy Franklin, these other guys. I think that there is something to be said. Like And Thor Nystrom broke it down that he liked his profile outright. He doesn't care that he's related to Christian McCaffrey, but there's something to be said about that. There's something to be said that he's going to have a support group. He obviously has a brother that knows how to be a professional that can help guide him through that. And with those guys, he's got that. With some of these guys like Henry Ruggs, hang out with a bad crowd or Rashi Rice, you can't get to them. With this guy, if there's any issues or messing around, you better believe that his brother is going to be like, "Hey, what's going on?" Like, you're not going to lose sight of players like this, which there's something to be said about that. So, and again, third round pick to a new organization, new regime that's building things their way. I like it, dude. So I don't mind taking Luke McCaffrey. I like taking Kamani Vidal, right? Kamani Vidal, he in college, you look at the numbers, man. I mean, this guy production was off the charts. Production was awesome when he finally got a job, and it doesn't work that way with running back the way it does with wide receiver. With wide receiver, late breakouts are really problematic because you have two or three wide receivers on the field at all times. So that's telling us that these guys like Xavier Legette wasn't one of the top two or three wide receivers on the team until he was a super senior, right? Whereas at running back, you have one starter, and sometimes you have good running backs behind the other guys. You look at all those years at Miami. I mean, in Alabama too. Like, if you can just start for 1 year for Alabama, that means you're a star, right? And like, so I have no problem with this guy having a late breakout. He's got tremendous statistics, and his workout metrics were great. From what we saw at the pro day and everything worked out well, and he goes to a good landing spot. He goes to a team again that jettisoned virtually everybody: Keenan Allen and Mike Williams and Austin Eckler and Gerald Everett and everybody. And then they didn't get Blake Corum. We're talking about the Chargers here with Jim Harbaugh and Greg Roman, and they want to pound the rock. And this is the guy that they added and picked. So Kamani Vidal, interesting for sure for me. I also like Dylan Lobby, who's not showing up here. You want to take stabs on those late round guys that are, that put up numbers and kind of flexed on everybody, and he fell because he went to UNH. That's not a football school, really. But who knows? It could have just been a guy that should have gone to a better school. I also kind of interested in taking Isaac Garendo. His workout metrics, everything was good. He went to the 49ers where, I know it's the CMC show, but Kyle Shanahan has had no problem skipping over other people based on, he doesn't care about draft capital. He doesn't care about depth chart. Elijah Mitchell beat out Trey Sermon despite being drafted a couple rounds later in the same draft, right? We've seen that happen. So if there's ever been a hot hand coach, it's Shanahan. You could basically get value in if McCaffrey goes down and this guy gets a shot, does something, you can then trade this player. So I think that's interesting for me. And then I guess I'll wrap it up just with some undrafted free agent players. If you're in like the real deep sicko drafts, like I know Hal in the chat, he's in some crazy sicko leagues with, like 70 rounds. And he said in the chat earlier, 6-round rookie draft, IDP. So he's asking about Latu, right? I actually don't really like Latu because he's got some medical issues you got to keep an eye on. Just saying. Jimmy Lake in Washington basically told him to medically retire, so be careful with that. But if you're in really crazy deep leagues, you might have to look at some of these undrafted free agents. I just like waiting and adding them off waivers. But I look at Johnny Wilson, who was drafted. If he gets converted into tight end, that's wheels up. And again, he says he doesn't want to play tight end. But if the coach goes to you and says, "Hey, Johnny, 7th-round pick," you're probably not going to make the team. But if you go and work out with the tight ends today, maybe you will make the team as a tight end, right? And then what if he becomes a tight end behind Dallas Goedert as a converted wide receiver? Now it's very interesting. So Johnny Wilson, interested. As undrafted guys, I look at a guy like Leon Johnson, right? So Leon Johnson, went to a D3 school. Then he was good enough there to get into Oklahoma State and was going to redshirt, but then they had a bunch of injuries for the season. They said, "Leon, can you just play?" And he played pretty well. And he didn't get drafted, but Jim Harbaugh went out and added this guy. Jim Harbaugh, a guy who was very plugged into college football because he just came over from college football. He said, "Leon, Why don't you come here and work out for us? This guy is 6'5", 210 pounds. And this team doesn't really have a split end. They have Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnston, and now they have DJ Chark. But this guy could battle to potentially be a split end and flash a little bit. Again, with undrafted free agents, if they do anything, I trade them right away. That's what I do. Trade Preston Williams. You know, for every uh, for every Adam Thielen or Doug Baldwin you find, there's 100 guys like Preston Williams and Keon Coleman and Robert Foster and all these guys that you look back and say, man, I wish I traded them when I could have traded them for any. That's usually what happens with undrafted free agents. So the plan with a lot of these guys is to add them and then flip them. So I'll mention Leon Johnson. I'll mention Isaiah Williams. So this is a guy that, Brad Holmes was the head scout for the Rams when they got Cooper Kupp. He is obviously the GM for the Lions when they found Amon-Ra St. Brown in the 4th round. And this guy, Isaiah Williams, has a lot of Amon-Ra St. Brown to him, and they made him a priority signing. $250,000 guaranteed is unusual for an undrafted free agent. They basically said, we want you. We probably would have drafted you if we had more picks. We want to make sure you don't sign with anyone else, so we'll give you a kind of high-end contract for these players. So keep an eye on Isaiah Williams. Keep an eye on Leon Johnson. The last one I'll mention is a guy named Tyler Harrell. And Tyler Harrell, this is how deep a cut this one is the article I wrote, he doesn't even show up with a link because he's not even in our database. And this guy didn't really produce much. He bounced around from Louisville to Alabama. People were enamored with his speed, 4.29 40 at his pro day, but he didn't really do much. But that super speed is interesting if he finds his way onto the field. And he landed with the Jets, where if there was ever a quarterback who is weird enough to just kind of like get fixated with a player and demand that that player plays, it's Aaron Rodgers. So that's the narrative there again. Very unlucky he even makes the team. But if I'm going to go for a guy that's undrafted in these deep, crazy rounds, give me a guy with unbridled speed. That's Tyler Harrell. So that's how I'm approaching these drafts. Do whatever you want. Hopefully that helps you guys out. If you want to help me out, there's one big way right now. And honestly, you'll be helping yourself out too. I made a not a rookie, but I made a best ball draft guide over at fantasyalarm.com. It has my top 240 rankings for best ball. It has a draft grid that you can use. And if you do buy it, hit me up on Twitter or on the Discord at Coupe Fiasco on Twitter, and I'll send you the Excel if you want to use the Excel. When I do my drafts, I have the Excel up for the draft grid, and I have my draft over here, and I just go through and it's like red, green for the guys I pick, and I go through and I draft that way, and my teams come out incredible, to be honest. So that's up right now, and that really is kind of the cheat code. If you're not a Fantasy Alarm member, you should be, but not everybody, not everybody has to be. You know what I mean? Like, I would love for you to be. We hang out in the Discord, we chat all the time. If you are a Fantasy Alarm member, you get the draft guide with all of our stuff for free. But the cheat code to get access to my feelings without being a full member is just buy that draft guide. It's $25. I'm going to update the rankings all year long. I've already updated them after the draft. You get all my rankings for every position. And I'll tell you what, my best ball rankings for tight end in some of these spots don't really deviate much from my redraft rankings. So you get access to all my rankings, all these articles I've written for it, which are my targets at every position. So targets to me are the guys I'm drafting, not in the first round, but like second, third, fourth, fifth, like that I'm spending up on, right? Like guys like Drake London and Michael Pittman that I love. I tell you why I love them and why I'm picking them second, third. Because a lot of people just focus on sleepers and busts and all that. In this guide, I go through and I give you all the players I like, the guide to the whole way through. So you get my targets at every position. You get my sleepers, my busts, my rookies. You get my strategy, just writing up, how many players to take at each position, all this stuff. All that is in this draft guide that you get. It's a one-time purchase. And as I update it throughout the year, you just get a little notification that says it's been updated and you just download the new copy. And if I've ever helped you with anything, you know, becoming a Fantasy Alarm member is the best way to help us. But the next best way is to buy this guide. And it's going to help you. You can win a ton of prizes, but it helps me out, man. It really does, because this is a tough industry. It really is. How many jobs out there? I used to have a job where I get paid a good amount of money and I didn't work hard. I would just go in and do real estate, blah, 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 don't care. And how many jobs out there do you not have to work hard and you can still make money? How many jobs out there, if you work as hard as you possibly can, then you make money, right? Like, think about your job. most cases, if you go into work and work as hard as you possibly can every day, then your boss is going to like you and you're going to make money. In this industry, there are a lot of people out there that work as hard as they possibly can, and it doesn't work out. You know what I mean? And there's not enough support from the community. There's not enough people out there. Happens. It's like being a musician, right? A lot of people work as hard as they can. They want to be a musician so bad, and they want to be a superstar so bad, and it's difficult. You know what I mean? So it's a difficult gig. I'm blessed to have the Fantasy Alarm crew and the Fantasy Alarm family backing me. I'll do anything for you guys in the Discord, wherever else, in DMs. If you want to support me, become a member, get this draft guide. And if you want to just enjoy the podcast and enjoy the tweets and enjoy the free articles, then do that too, because it's fantasy football. It's meant to be fun, and not everybody's doing great and can afford to buy draft guides and do all that stuff. But if you can and you can support us and me and Howard and the gang, I would love that. It would be the greatest thing, and I'd really appreciate it. And if you do buy the guide and you like it, tweet at me, DM me, let me know, man, because it means everything. And I hope you win a lot of money and you get super rich based on your $25 investment. So that's it for me. I'll get off my soapbox and I'm out of here. Enjoy your weekend. We'll be back on Wednesday with a draft for Fantasy Alarm with Howard Bender live with all members from our Discord. So it's not just supporting us. You get to hang out with us, do drafts and everything. So shout out to you guys. Appreciate the support.